Hey, Steve Kirby here again. In this little video, I'm going to show you how to make this rather nifty gradient tapered stroke for limber. So the other day on Twitter, somebody called Kyle Hamrick, who is a teaching assistant at the School of Motion, posted this little animated GIF of a tapered stroke for After Effects, which is something that a lot of people have been after for a long time. And he's doing a kind of month-long thing this month of January called Text Experiments, where he's showing lots of kind of cool ways you can do things with text layers and text animators in After Effects. And I think some of the longer tutorials that he's going to post are probably going to be up on School of Motion or perhaps on his own site in a week or two. But in the meantime, Jay Brown posted this other little GIF that I think he's made himself, and he's put a limb in there, which has got this nice gradient on it. And that's something that till now we haven't been able to do with Limber. And I was aware of this sort of text animator method for doing gradients and tapers, but I kind of shied away from using it in the past because it's not possible with just the 3 layers of Limber, so I couldn't do it as a simple straight custom limb. But if we go through a slightly longer process and use an animation preset and a text layer, then we can do this. So I thought it was about time I kind of cracked on and showed you how to do that. The first thing you're going to need to do is pop over to aescripts.com, and on the the main page for Limber here, we're going to scroll down and go to this resources section and click on animation presets, which is a new upload that I've made today. That's then going to download a file somewhere. That'll be on my desktop for me. So then in After Effects here, what I'm going to do is make a completely new comp. So we'll just start off from scratch and then come over to Limber. I'm going to want to make sure I've got bone selected and name it whatever you want. And I'm going to hit new, and left is fine. So this is just a regular bone. Then I'm going to take my type tool and just click somewhere in my comp, doesn't matter where. But before I do anything else, before I do any typing or anything, and I'll need to keep that text layer selected, I'm going to come up to Animation, Apply Animation Preset, and then I'm going to just navigate to where that download from aescripts went. So my downloads always go to my desktop, so it's in there, Limber Animation Presets, Gradient Bone, FFX, and I'm going to do that. Now that's going to apply some settings to this text layer, and what we need to do next is tell this text layer about which layers we want it to use, which of our limb layers. So on the text layer's effect controls, there are these 3 layer selectors. So for end controller, I'm going to tell it to use the ankle. That's the end controller. For start controller, I'm going to tell it to use the hip, and the limb layer itself, of course, is the leg. And once you've got those 3 drop downs all set up correctly, everything else just pop into place, and we'll get this gradient limb going on here. So I'm going to twirl up the text layer itself because we don't really need to see all that stuff anymore at the moment. And then come back to my end controller, my ankle layer here, just so I can move this around and just show you that everything works as you'd expect. So the first thing, of course, is that it inherits the colors. So if I change this to this, actually let's make that a nice yellow, and then change my upper color to something red, we'll get this kind of fiery glow along the thing. The middle color does absolutely nothing. As you can see, we've still got this middle color set to blue, but there's no blue in there anywhere. And the same thing goes for the shape. This the way that these this kind of text layer taper works, it's just easier to sort of avoid the middle size altogether. And so, you'll always find this is like a completely smooth, perfect taper. But you do have control over the start size and the end size. So I can go and make my start size bigger, my end size smaller or bigger, or make them the same for something which looks more like a normal stroke with a gradient on it like that. Looks more like a normal bone. I'll make that a bit bigger. And then, like I said, the middle size does nothing. That's just kind of useless in this this instance. And the square end won't do anything either. But the size scale works. Can make the whole thing bigger and smaller, so we can still scale up our characters. And if I like, for some reason, I can make the whole thing bigger without making it longer as well. All the dynamics and all the forward kinematics work as you'd expect. I can still go into FK like this and turn everything around and do all my normal FK swingy stuff and pull that back. I can still change my clockwise from left to right. That's one of the new things we introduced in Limbo 1.5, in case you missed that. And the rotate start and rotate end only really affect the end controllers themselves, but they always work. And of course, the non-stretchiness works as well if you want to have your limbs of limited length. And the anti-pop works as well. Let me just put this back to where you'll see that taking effect. Turn that up and down like that. So that's all pretty cool. But if we wanted to use a different type of bone rather than just the sort of vanilla bone, which is what this was, then we can still copy and paste those in. So something we introduced with the 1.5 update was this bendy bone. So I can come over to this comp here, which is from the limb library. You'll have to import your limb library as normal, and of course, this being a bone, it's only going to work in CC 2018 and onwards. Open the bendy bone comp, select one of the limb layers. I'll just select the limb layer itself. I'm going to hit copy. Then I'm going to come back to the comp I was working in, select one of the limb layers and hit paste. And we're going to get a little expression error because we need to reset those layer controllers that were on the text layer when we do that. So I'll select the text layer, come back to my effect controls, and then we need to tell it again which layer the limb layer is. It remembers the start and end controller because they don't get modified by that pasting process, but the limb layer gets replaced. So now I've got to reselect left leg again, and then everything's back to normal. It's changed color because I copied and pasted, and when we copy and paste, it copies all the properties that were in the limber effect. So those yellows and blues and the different sizes and things have kind of come through with that pasting effect. If you want to do that, but you don't want to, if you sort of just want to paste the limb layer, but without changing your limber effect, then the way to do that is to hit Alt when you paste. So I'm just going to actually undo. So we go back to where we had this. I'm going to go and hit copy again, because sometimes the sort of copy action can kind of get forgotten. So back in the bendy bone comp, I'm going to hit copy, and then in comp 4 I'm going to do this, but I'm going to hold Alt this time and press paste. And you can see when I reconnect that layer again, that we now have the colors that we had before, and the length and the sizes that we had before, but we've got that limb layer to be a bendy one rather than just a straight one. And if you're not familiar with that custom limb, it's just like an ordinary bone, but it adds kind of you can't see them, but it adds tangent handles to the joint and pulls them out according to this length property, joint tangent length, which is on the limb there. So if I make this longer or shorter, it just gets sort of more or less bendy. You have to sort of set that to where it makes sense for you and the length and size of your limb. So that's that. It works really well actually, and it works with the bone with foot as well. If you want to integrate your foot into the stroke itself, you can copy and paste that one over, and the gradient will just flow into the foot. And so like I said, everything else in there works. So what else do I need to say about it? Not a lot really, other than I hope it's fun using it. And if you do have any characters with gradients along their arms or legs, maybe this is a good way of getting that done. So see you next time. Bye.